guys, welcome to OE University Live. We're glad that you joined us, and you can see that we're still inside.
Absolutely.
It's September. I'm expecting fall football weather, and I got 90 degrees back.
Now, if you're out there watching football in this weather, you're going to fall.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully, maybe by November, we can get back out in the shop full time.
How is that GoFundMe for the AC coming anyway?
I've got $12.32
Okay, good.
donated, and
so you can buy a fuse.
Yes, right. Only $39,940 something left to go. So, all right. Well, today's the day. We're going to talk about Mercedes-Benz. Now, I think
Looking forward to this one.
I think there's an increase in Mercedes making our non-dealership shops because Mercedes has got a lot of vehicles under 40,000 and a lot of financing options. So, I'm seeing more and more of them on the road than ever before. So, as we start with every month, there are 3 ways in which you can obtain OE information. It doesn't mean that you obtain all of your OE information via these 3 sources, but there are 3 places you can go. You can look to the estimating systems. Some have embedded procedures in them. You can do third-party sites, such as iCar, which we will get to here shortly. And then, of course, always your ultimate source. Well, that's the OE website.
We're going to see in this one that you can write estimates and stuff with some of the other information, but if you're going to fix the car, you're going to pick the OE website.
Yeah, this is the OE I always used to tell you guys that I hated so much, just because you had to know body numbers and you had to know things that you didn't know with others, and so I would just get flustered and.
Or if you just have the VIN, you don't have to know all that.
Right. Well, I'd get flustered and call Larry and go, just tell me the answer. So, Mark, start us off here on the iCar technical.
Well, we just jump into the RTS. Jump in, go to click into it, find the grill, the emblem, click it, and away we go, and we're into Mercedes information. So a number of different things that are in here. So we'll just go through a few of them. So everybody talks about position statements. So the first thing you do is you click into position statements, and there they are. So we got diagnostics and wheel repair, replacing glass, and some other things like that. But bottom line is, and one of the things that people have gotten stuck on is, I want a position statement on this. I want it on that. You got to get a position statement is just like a Cliff Notes cheat sheet. It's not how you negotiate a claim. It just tells you what's in there so you can go find the information to get there.
Right. There's a couple things. I always hate it, and I just, in fact, covered this earlier in the month when I was in Montana. I really hate it when an estimator or a body shop uses a position statement with an insurance company. I like them for customers because they've got letterhead on them, and I think they're great for customers to easily digest. But the meat and potatoes of why the OE wrote that position statement and how it relates to the car and the specific repair I'm doing, well, that's in the information. And so that's what I need to be presenting as my negotiation tool or my file documentation or any of that, not a position statement.
Yeah, if you're sliding a position statement across the table saying, pay me, it's not going to go well.
Yeah, no, because I'm going to go, really?
So we look at a couple position statements. So first one, we talked about scanning forever. And so, of course, Mercedes has that. But one of the ones that's interesting about glass is that aftermarket glass, they have a deposition on it, and there's a few things. The air conditioning system, the UV protection, the electronics, even the sound capacity inside the interior cabin of the vehicle is depending on the windshield to actually reflect the noise and the acoustics. And it's engineered for that. And so for those reasons, they're saying you got to use our glass, of course, with safety and everything else, too.
Right, but Mercedes builds a lot of technology into that windshield.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a lot there, and we had, I think during the glass show, the guy was telling us that there's a windshield coming out that's going to remove the pixels of rain.
Yeah.
So the windshield's going to become like a screen that will remove barriers by, some sort of massive code. So if we don't have enough lines of code in a car now, let's add on another couple $100 million for a windshield.
They're probably going to use lasers.
Yes, laser.
Laser.
Yes, laser. Lasers come in handy. I still laugh every time.
All right, so speaking of glass, let's just keep that rolling.
So take the position statement. We'll just go into the positions, the area of glass. And here's an article that iCar wrote about Mercedes and glass and kind of explains what I just talked about.
All right.
So a lot of information in here when you start to jump through the RTS. Now, of course, we're just writing the estimate at this point. We're not fixing the car, but this is really going to point you in the right direction of what to look for when we get into Wiz.
Yeah, there's a lot there, and that's, there's no just calling the glass guy anymore.
No.
And we covered that on the glass show, and I don't know how many more ways we can hammer this into people's minds, but there's just no calling Bob's Glass Service anymore and having him come down and take out a piece of glass and put it back in.
You mean we can't go over and put in a glass in the parking lot while the teacher's teaching?
No.
Oh, okay.
Could be a problem there.
Yeah.
Completely. So let's keep going on through it. What else do we have there in the iCar portal?
Well, we got the restraints, and once you jump into the restraints, they have certain procedures that have to go, and then the bottom line is what has to be replaced in a deployment, what has to be checked in a non-deployment. There's just a ton of information here. Again, when you're writing the estimate, this is all the stuff that gets included.
Right. And again, I think one of the most important things to print here is that it says C-Class.
Yeah.
Right. So while
This is a car of the masses.
if I'm not a Mercedes-Benz certified collision center, I may see a lot of C-Classes. But if I happen to see something that's not a C-Class, then this would not probably apply. I'm still going to have to do a little bit better because iCar does very clearly state that, hey, this is what you got to do on the
It's a C-Class, yep.
Yep, so there's some things there to do.
Yeah, so when you start to look at it, parts that have to be replaced fall on a deployment, and there's a lot there. You know, the head bag, the knee bolster, pelvis airbag, there's just all kinds of stuff that when you're writing an estimate, you got 25 lines of information on airbags if your airbag deploys.
And
Well, there's a lot of checks there too, Larry, right?
well, there's some other things that come into play. If it's a hybrid, there's a whole other list of stuff that are affected if it's a stage 2 deployment, which can be an issue. So, you know, we'll talk about that later, but you have to know the model. And obviously there's different airbags systems in 2 doors versus 4 doors versus SUVs. So Benz has it, you know, broken out pretty well. And that's why you always have to go back to the OEM repair information and look at what they have for their specific model line or series.
And we're still testing seat belts and doing all the things
class,
that we've been talking
excuse me,
about
class.
all
All
year.
that stuff, yeah.
Right? So none of that goes away. So, and it just gets deeper and deeper. I'd say as the cars go up in value in the Mercedes line, there's probably more here for me to do.
Well, just because, an S-Class has a ton of electronics, but a C-Class does too. So we can't say, okay, that's the bottom of Mercedes. We can kind of treat it like a bottom car. No, it's actually a Mercedes that
No, that's
has
a pretty
those
extensive
electronics.
list for a C-Class.
It actually is.
Well, you got to
There's a
remember,
lot there.
this is not their lowest line car.
No.
You know, the CLS is. That's their entry model line. That's what they came out for, to try and capture the kids that are going into college. So when they graduate college, they can go to a C-Class.
Yep.
And then from a C-Class, when they first get married, they can go and buy an E-Class. You know, and then when their kids are starting to get a little bit older, maybe high school or going to college, they want you then to move into, let's say, an S-Class and start that all over again. That's Mercedes' way of, you know, because when you're a certified shop, you have to take these classes on, you know, Mercedes-Benz history and their branding and what they want you to do. And this is their whole plan, is to capture you from the time you can drive to the time you retire. And that's why they're giving you all these cars and stretching them out. That's why the C-Class kind of moved up a little bit in price over the last few years versus being the entry-level Benz. Now they have the CLS, which is the new entry-level Benz for people, and the SUV, the GLA, and stuff like that.
Nice. All right, so non-deployment. What are some of the things that I got to inspect in a non-deployment?
Well,
Bags haven't blown.
The airbags haven't blown.
Car's
We
been in
still
a
have to, you know, like, if we go through it and look, like pyrotechnical components are to be checked for external damage and replaced if necessary. So a pyrotechnic component would be an airbag. So if an airbag cover's got a little gash or something in it, we got to be inspecting those. And then axial play or noise detected in the steering column tube. So we got to check the axial play. If there's any noise when we turn it, we got to replace it. So there's a lot of checks that have to go on, even in a non-deployment and possibly replacement of these parts, even if it hasn't deployed.
Right, and they've got a pretty extensive list there to follow.
Yeah.
I would think, we joke now, the first probably 25 lines on my estimate are just when I'm checking, and I haven't even gotten to the damage yet that's there. So.
And then one of the things great about RTS is the frequently asked questions, because people ask a lot of questions about Mercedes, and there is a lot of questions in there that people have asked, and they've actually got the answers. So rather than trying to figure it out or posting on Facebook going, hey, what do you know about, check here first. You probably got the answer that actually is the answer, not by some Facebook lawyer.
Oh, boy.
Or technician of the day.
Technician
right?
of the day.
I've been doing this 30 years
Yep.
the wrong way, but let
Yep.
me keep sharing that with you.
Exactly.
So yeah, they've got a really nice breakdown here what the position is on weld through primer and outer body sectioning, and what this is a great guidepost to let you know before you go spend the day pass money or whatever.
Yep.
Is it available to you?
Yep.
Great, it is. Now I'm not going to get in there after spending my money and go, I didn't find what I needed.
Yeah, and there's one more spot that we'll jump to here. So partial replacement, which is they say, your frame rail sectioning and this and that. But what we're going to discover here in this show as we start walking through is that if you don't have access to the information and you don't have the right equipment, you actually really shouldn't be fixing this car, period.
No, even the CLS and even the C-Class.
Doesn't
I mean,
matter.
There's a lot
You
of
should not be fixing this car unless you're trained and equipped. We'll talk about some of the training that Mercedes has as well.
Awesome. So again, this is it's a great little service that iCar has through the technical repairability, technical support portal, RTS, to let you know ahead of time if it's worth, if you're only going to get 1 or 2 of these a year, before I go spend my money.
Yep.
But
Now, some other cool features, again, back to Mercedes, because a lot of shops don't see a ton of these. So when one of these comes in, it's like the exotic. And Mercedes isn't exotic, but it certainly can be exotic to some shops. So iCar has the search feature. So you just put in something like Mercedes headlight, and it pulls up information about the adaptive headlights, additional calibration requirements around headlights, et cetera. So a lot of information you can get just by typing in something that you don't even know, like headlights. You're going to replace a headlight, type that in, get some information.
yeah, it's hard to imagine I'm calibrating headlights,
Well,
right? I used
to the
just-
VIN
I
number
used
to
just
the
have to
thrust
aim 'em.
line. Well, to the VIN number to the thrust line of the car, which is different than just having it on the wall and making sure that it kind of hits waist high,
Yeah.
like the old days.
I know those VIN requirements on Mercedes-Benz headlights, that makes it really hard for
That's
alternative parts.
that's the new MRA models that we'll be talking about. That architecture and technology that's come in, and you have to code it, otherwise the lights won't work and stuff. And it's going to become a real difficult process, not only for the certified shops and the dealerships to learn about this, but it's going to be an impossibility for anybody that's doesn't have the training. I mean, really, it's becoming where if you don't have the training for a specific model, especially Europeans, you probably shouldn't be touching that car. You should be shipping it off to a shop that can do that is supposedly supposed to be able to do the repairs. And we've seen issues with even those shops. And I do believe you're going to see a little bit tougher requirements on checking from the Europeans as the next few years come around. They're going to become much more stricter on their programs.
Yeah. Well, let the car go and live to fight another day.
Yeah.
Basically. All right, Mark, you brought us this really cool diagram.
Yeah, well, and I love it. It's nice and colorful.
It is.
And what it really describes is that if you got sensors in the bumper, you got sensors in the grills, and these are radars. This is not just a little sensor, a motion sensor. So you've got it in the windshield, you got it in the fenders, you got it in the bumpers. Pretty much any collision is going to affect possibly a radar system, which is all about the drivability, distronics, all these different system, lane departure. So any collision's probably going to affect a radar system.
You gotta realize cars nowadays are basically like airplanes or submarines. Because an airplane you can't really look around and see everywhere. And a submarine even more so. They don't have a
There's
glass.
no rear view mirror on an airplane?
No, no, there's not. Well, it's behind you, so you don't care what's behind you. But like with a submarine, there's no windows in it. For you to see out of. This is not like the Nautilus from 20,000 Leagues. That big, huge glass thing that look cool. Submarines are just a big round tube that's floating through, almost like a cigar tube in a way, that's floating through the water. And how do they see? How do they navigate? How do they do anything? Everything's radar, sonar. Everything is the whole entire thing is just like that picture there. It's surrounded by all these radars that's protecting each area and feeding information back to whoever's at the controls. And that's the same way a car is nowadays, but they're trying to make it easier that you're not controlling everything, that the car's going to give you highlights if there's a problem. The car's going to make a artificial intelligent type decision that you're not in danger, but if there is danger, we're going to warn you then. And only then, and if you really watch like lane departure stuff, you're driving along and all of a sudden you'll see a car in your rearview mirror because you catch it peripherally, but then all of a sudden it'll start beeping when it gets closer. Why? Because the car now predicts that, you moved the wheel a little too much to the left or to the right, and you're getting too close to the lane. There's a car too close to you. We're going to predict that this could happen. Now we're going to warn you versus always constantly annoying you with beeps and sounds.
Yep.
Yeah, and you have to realize that. And like you said, anything could affect. We found on a Chevy Cruze that just changing the mirror changes the all-around camera and the lane departure in the rear.
And an alignment.
And an alignment.
Yeah.
Yep. Because of the backup camera. Works off the
So
rivers.
much goes off the alignment of a car these days. But this was really interesting. So it's another great article that iCar had put out about Okay, now that we know that there's really nowhere on this car that I'm going to have an accident that isn't affecting one of these radar systems.
Yep.
Now I know that that position statement has a meaning.
Yep.
Doesn't just mean here's a position statement. So when it comes to calibration requirements,
Well, I love this part of the article. It basically says, depending on the specific vehicle, there's a long list of steps required after the battery is disconnected. So you disconnect the battery for any reason, there's a long list. For example, the ML350 has a 24-step procedure that's needed to complete the basic programming.
and that's
24
not the
step.
calibration
No,
for
no,
the
that's
sensors.
just
That's
the-
just because you disconnected the battery, I got to bring the car back up.
The basic programming. And so there are many systems that may need to be calibrated after removal or collision. So be sure to check the repair manual to know what systems are affected by the repairs that you're performing to ensure a complete and safe and quality repair. What is that saying?
Go look at the manual.
Go to the OE information.
Keep in mind that sometimes translation is a little bit different, and Mercedes-Benz, from going through the classes, they don't calibrate anything. Their feeling is calibration happens
At the dealer.
No, at the manufacturer of that product. So if you have an airbag control module that's made by Bosch, it's calibrated there, and then it gets sold or shipped
Yep.
to Mercedes-Benz.
Yep.
It gets put in the car. Anything that gets done at the dealership or at Mercedes-Benz in the repair information, the manual is going to say reinitialize or initialize system, and that's basically what we call a calibration that the Americans sometimes use in their terminology. Most of the European companies will say in their repair information, reinitialize the system, which is basically you're reintroducing it to the car or reinitializing it to the system that's now being plugged back in again, and a re-aim is now also coming into that because you have to re-aim it. But the calibration is what they feel is done at the manufacturer. So if you're looking for a word calibration in the repair information, you're never going to find it. It might become confusing.
Right.
So actually, like when you take Mercedes-Benz classes or Audi or Porsche, they have to tell you how the translation comes through. Because
Right.
some people, for those out there who can speak 2 languages or more than that and read the translation, it doesn't come through the same way all the time. So when they translate it, sometimes it's verbatim and it doesn't make sense. And that's why they have to change it sometimes.
So we got to translate the translation.
Yeah, in some cases.
but-
Like sometimes you'll read a repair procedure and go, what the hell is this? And I'll call up Taylor or Kevin and go, hey, what's the... No, this is what they mean. This is what they mean by that. And it's just a translation, verbatim. They have some translator that doesn't know body repair, so he's just translating
Yep.
verbatim.
Well, I think we're ready to go to the OE.
Well, and I just
Right.
want to point out one more thing on the RTS, down in the lower right of the list there. It says Mercedes-Benz ADAS. There's some other information that's in there. And when you're playing with the ADAS systems, this is not something you're going to do, again, with your scan tools and different things. This is going back to the dealer to get reprogrammed, to get set up, to get dialed in.
Yeah, there's a lot of work there. I don't think I'd want to do that in-house.
No.
I think there's a lot there, but
Okay, so the next step is let's just go to the OE website.
Let's get in
Just
there.
Click on into it, and Larry, this is your world.
Well, Mercedes-Benz has probably the most intensive site. So you go to StarTech Info, you're going to have to sign up. If you're a collision repair shop that's sponsored or a dealership certified sponsored shop, you'll get access to it. Otherwise, anyone else, it's 24-hour, 7-day, 31 days, or 365 days. Yes, it is a little pricey. Most of the Europeans are a little more pricier than the Americans.
right.
But we're going to see there's a lot of info in there. It's worth the money.
It's well worth it. It's probably
Yeah.
the most intensive interactive site, and it's not PDF stuff. This is really very interactive the way they work it versus everyone else is just basically, you can see it's all PDF stuff like we saw with Volkswagen / Audi. You'll have to make up a password and a username. I do believe that they're a little quirky with the password. It's got to be a special character, at least one uppercase, and I think it's 10 password now.
Can Achtung be my? Can I be my password?
Yeah, you might want
Okay.
to be careful with that. The funny thing is that we're on it for free because we get it for the year when we sign up, and I have to change my password
As
at
a
least
certified facility.
As a certified facility, we got to change it about 9 times.
Wow.
And my password for the learning link, I have to change like 8 or 9 times. And all of a sudden, it bounces you out, and everything's the same as it passes through StarTech, the learning link, or even Mercedes-Benz Collision Centers, MB Collision Centers. I can get access to that has personal information in there for me, and it's the same passwords and stuff, and it has to all works off the learning link. And it does bounce you out and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, usually the dealer will give you a number if you're certified. You'll use the number that they give you, that they assign you, and give you a separate password. And now,
So just when they give you that number, is Mercedes-Benz on the back end seeing and tracking
Yes.
and what you're
Oh, they
accessing.
know when they come in for
Okay.
their inspections, just like Audi, Porsche, Jaguar, Land Rover. They come in and they know how many times you've been on there, how much time you're using it, and stuff like that. And you have to have documents either printed or they now allowing electronic documents to save trees and ink copies.
But they know that you went and got the
They
information.
know you're doing
so
it. Yeah, they already have.
There's an electronic.
They're not
tracker.
asking a question they don't have an answer to already. Just like ordering supplies and stuff like that. They'll go over to you, where you keep all your, adhesives and sealants and everything else. And we'll talk about some of that stuff later.
Yeah.
And they want to see that stuff there, but they also want to see billing for it.
Yeah.
And they'll pick files. So we get to now here, which can be very, very confusing. We go through an 8-hour course on this alone, and then each time we go down for the 1-day course from them, we have to do at least 2-3 hours of this where we're working as a team, 2 people together working on it. And the easiest thing I tell you to do is don't read anything on here. I'm going to tell you the trick on how to get through this. First off, you can't work with Edge. You can't work with Internet Explorer. You have to use Internet Explorer. You can't use Chrome. You can't use, what's that other one? Firefox.
Right.
Anything like that. It has to be Explorer. And you have to install Java. And you'd be surprised how many computers don't come with Java installed. You just go and download Java automatically and you have to go through it.
Yeah, when I jumped into it with Edge and didn't have Java, it didn't like it. It
No.
said, no, sorry.
And I said that to you. I said, why isn't this working? I
Yeah.
looked at it. I go, no, you're on Edge. You got to get out of that.
Yeah.
So now, when you get to this page and you're on Internet Explorer and you have Java, just scroll down to the middle and you're going to see something that's going to tell you launch WizNet. And that's what you want to click on. Right underneath where it says
Okay.
WizNet, you want to launch WizNet. That's the only thing you should click on. There's a lot of other stuff you can look at. Most of it's dealer. This is the same thing the dealer has. It's not like a separate entity or a different thing. So now you get to this particular page here. So now we're very confused. Up at the very top where it says enter VIN, you're going to enter the VIN except for the first 3 digits. The first 3 digits are in a drop-down box and gives you all the first 3 digits for every Mercedes-Benz.
Actually, when I entered it in, I entered the entire VIN, clicked enter, and it took the first 3 and popped them over.
Popped them over.
Yeah.
And you can do a copy and paste if you want. Now it'll come up and it'll change the number and put the VIN off to the side, which drives people insane. But now you're going to get your model number on this particular vehicle, and your body style and stuff like that. And this is going to give you all the documents. Now there's a wide range of information on here that the mechanical department uses and stuff like that. Most of the stuff you guys are going to see, and you have all the repair information here, is basically going to be in the 60s, which is all the body stuff. 60s, 70s, maybe 90s, and that's about it. You kind of skip the 80s a little bit most of the time. So now you're going to determine where you want to go. Once you click on, let's say, Body General. Now, we're also taught not to click on everything in like number 60 or 61 or 62 because you're going to get too much information.
You'll see.
So yeah, we're going to show you. So you're going to click on that, and then you're going to click on the right-hand side. You're going to click all the information that you want, and you're going to get all the Body General documents that are in there. And
So if you click on body, and then you click on the information types in the upper right there, and you just click Show Documents, you are off to the races with information. Which is the next slide.
you're gonna feel like you're in law school.
Yeah.
And here's every law from 1776 all the way through to today.
And this is where I went, screw it. Hey, Larry. So,
Well, but, all the different things that everybody has questions about Mercedes, this is in here. What about measuring systems? What about welders? What about products, corrosion protection? It's all in there, and there's a lot of it.
yeah.
Basically, when we started off with that search criteria and all those sections there, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, 100, that's basically your index. And then as you pop each one open, it becomes an index. So it's opposite of what we've seen with the other OEMs, that's just a PDF with hyperlinks. This you have to actually search through.
Wow.
And it does become a little bit of a thing, but it gives you everything you could possibly. There's not a question in here that isn't answered. Now, sometimes, I got to call up Taylor or Kevin and say to them, hey, look.
Where is it?
Where is this again? You mentioned it in class. Where is this again? And they'll give you a document number. You can search by document numbers. They have like special, and I try and do that also. And the document number, as you can see in that far right-hand corner, is a ridiculously long number that makes no sense to me whatsoever. But obviously the Germans have some sort of code to it, and I'm sure there's some guy who puts this in there and can tell me what each one of those numbers and letters and everything means. But those there, you put into a document.
You can also search by group
and
keyword, too.
Yeah, keyword. You can
So
do
there's
headlamps and
Yeah.
come down with it. So it is interactive, user-friendly. Basically, you're going to deal a lot with the front end of the car, the side of the car, and of course the rear of the car. Now, you notice they use the word front end and firewall, sidewall, which is your
Side of the
side
car.
It's not
panels.
the tires? I thought that was tires.
No, no,
Ah.
no. That is a portion of a tire or a component of a tire. Rear wall and rear end. So, yeah, they kind of translate differently, some of the words and stuff. You'll open up the sidewall, let's say, and you're not going to get the quarter panel in the rear, which is their rear fender, they call it. You're going to get it in the sidewall. Now, in this case, I would click on, if I wanted to change a quarter panel, which is a rear fender, I would click on 63, open that up, and then click only on 63.50 for rear fender, and then click on just repair to just get that certain information.
So that
There's-
way we're dialing it into the
yeah,
document
you're
we
trying
want.
to keep within that area. And, you know, before you change, go back 1 second on the screen. When you're in here, you know, you got to keep in mind that way before you start anything, there is a build sheet in here, unlike the other companies that give you the build sheet first and you move. There's a little blue car up at the top left-hand corner, right-hand corner, right area up there, right next to the print button.
Okay.
That's actually the build sheet, and you can print that out before and find out what the car's equipped with. That'll help you out. They don't have a tab here. They have a little icon for it, which is different. And there's a question and answer thing, and there's a couple other things to set up in here. I wouldn't play around too much with it, but we'll show you 1 or 2 tricks for it.
Unless
We're
you got
playing
like
with some
3
stuff.
weeks. If you got 3 weeks.
Oh, it's crazy.
If you're ever down on
the
workers' comp or whatever,
The WIS class
yeah.
alone, the tech class that you got to take, you got to print out like 200 pages that they print out, and it's a mechanical diagnosis that you have to go through. And they tell you, but you got to look it up in WIS and figure it out. And they purposely, the way it's written is you have to go through the entire WIS program to find this out and figure it out. So it's really interesting. It does teach you how to use it pretty well.
Teach you how to think German.
Yeah, teach you how to think in a flowchart series, basically.
It actually, you know, going through this, the site, and once you understand how it's laid out, it's actually pretty simple.
Well, look, when
Once
we're
you get
in
it.
class, like I told Mark yesterday, exactly what I'm doing with you, trying to teach Mark how to use it, which I gave him very little help. I gave him guidance on how to get it
I was
open.
a little frustrated
And- yes.
that you weren't helping more.
And Mark can attest to your very little help.
Well, the thing is because I wanted him to learn how to use it the right way. And there's a process of doing it. And no different than when we're in class. They pair us off with people. And it's like, you're going to print them out, you're going to find it. And then we're both going to explain to your group and that group and this group, and we all get to explain it together. And each class should do that so you're familiarized with it and you understand what you're doing with it. So as we click on this, Benz breaks their stuff up a little bit differently than some of the other companies. Generally, what they have is they have removal of the panel, they have the preparation of the panel, and then they have another document for installing the panel. Now, there's other things when you first click on, you know, replace complete rear fender. As you click on it, you're going to get a wide range of stuff. And when we first take the program, we have to read all this risk stuff and explosion and all this other stuff, which you should read if you don't know.
So if I click that right there, so click
Well,
it,
what they now do
it
is they
pops up.
also
It says
pop it up.
warning.
Now, they will give you an out.
You could die.
Well, it actually tells you the health risks and stuff like that. Now, I have read this document. You can skip it or show this document. Now, listen, you've read the document numerous times in practice classes that you've done through, but you should read them every so often and periodically. And each one has their own little thing here
pulls up.
for, you know, risk of fire, hazards, sparks,
Yeah.
explosion. Obviously, a hybrid battery one's going to be really pretty extensive. Some are just one short line like this.
Click it. There you go. There it is.
And now we have a wide range of information here about potential risks to people. Your plug-in connector for obviously for your your hybrid vehicles and stuff like that. How to check certain things on the vehicle. Quick disconnects on the vehicle. And this is obviously a PDF document that comes out that you can print if you wanted to, or save as a PDF or whatever the case is.
So now we've read it.
Yeah.
Now we're good. We're safe.
No.
Now we can go into it.
You're 1/1000, so all the way there.
Because I was
we're
looking
gonna-
at this breakdown and going, I just want to put a quarter panel on.
Yeah.
That's all I want to
That's
do.
all we're doing.
You're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy.
Oh, this is why people glue stuff on. Just kidding. All right.
we have some.
You didn't say that out loud, by the way. So
We
we're
have
good.
And I didn't say adhesive
Okay.
either. So we're
Yeah.
good.
We have some adhesive or bonding type procedures with Benz. They do have acoustical foams in here, as you can see, cavity prevention, seam sealing, high voltage components, about evaluation of them. That's your inspections of it. Also has measures for preventing damage to components while performing electrical welding. They really break it up. I mean, literally, you could click on measurements preventing damage to components. You're expecting a document, and you get a sentence. I mean, they really
could be small.
They really break things
Right.
up to certain areas and stuff. So you could have a wide range of different things on here to get tons of information. So now I have this replace fender. So instead of scrolling and seeing like a 3-inch area on the screen, which is very annoying, Mercedes-Benz gives you this little icon up here at the top, which is a little gray box with 4 little arrows pointing outward. And now it opens up the document bigger, so now you can see
So now you
it.
can just scroll on the right-hand side.
Now you can scroll on the right-hand side like anything
Made it
else.
to the quarter panel.
Finally.
Yes, you finally made it to the quarter
We
panel.
started
Here.
the show on Tuesday. On
It's-
Thursday, we made it to the quarter
Now,
panel.
your main document, when you have replace complete rear fender, will give you all the procedures, all materials, links to them. It'll also tell you if you have to use the frame bench or not.
Now, what if it's in German?
Well, Mark had this problem yesterday, and I forgot about
Everything
it.
was German. I'm like, Larry, I got it.
It
Pictures are
started
cool,
with
but
English.
It's in German.
And then I went to German. I'm like, what the hell did you do with this thing? And I really forgot, so I called Taylor. And of course, Taylor, listen, I went, stupid. I forgot. And the problem is because your computer's set up for it so long, and you have it for so many years, you kind of forget. Well, up in the icon here, at the top toolbar area, you have options. You click on that and you go to language, and you got to make sure that English is all put. Don't put American English,
Right?
Because it sometimes won't translate properly. So you have to put just English, plain simple English.
English.
Just
It doesn't
regular
say
English.
Queen's English or anything.
Yeah,
It's
no.
just English. Yeah.
Yeah, but they
Okay.
do have one that says American English. Don't
does.
put American.
Don't put that one in.
Make sure you put all English. Now, actually, with Mark's, he had priority.
I'm kind of not happy with that. I mean, I don't know why it's not sitting well. I mean,
They do have an option
for.
for. They do have one for Arkansorian, which is basically y'all. It'll come out.
But no Brooklynese.
No Brooklynese. No,
Yeah.
they don't have that yet. I've asked them for that. Mark actually was priority 2 was German. So when Mark was on priority 1, which was this document, if he clicked on like where that red arrow was pointed, priority 2 would go to now German.
So this whole document was in English. I'm like, cool, I'm good.
And they click
and
the
I click that
hyperlink.
thing and boom, Achtung.
Achtung!
So this is laid out. So this is the instructions of how to put
This is the overview.
rear fender.
Yeah, this is the overview of everything.
So there's their steps, and then off to the right
Everything that's
are
not
all the
in black.
hyperlinks.
Everything that's
Yeah.
not in black is hyperlinks.
Yep.
Blue and red.
Wow.
Okay.
But the red's going to be German?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well,
We fixed that.
It'll be German if you don't change
Change
the
it,
language on
okay.
priority 2.
Okay.
So then, if we go to the instructions, and so we just selected to pick to install the quarter panel, the rear fender, and then this document came up.
Now, Mercedes-Benz will give you part numbers for rivets, adhesives, or anything. Adhesives obviously are by the tube, or foams are by the tube. Rivets are a pain because they don't give you a number of rivets like we saw with BMW. Where BMW will give you the number of rivets, but not the part number. You got to look for the part number someplace else. By the code, like an N3 screw, you have to go to their parts listing to find the part number, but they tell you need 15 of them. Benz will give you the part number at the bottom for this, but you have to count in the
count 'em on the
picture,
picture, yep.
which in this case would be your right-hand side picture down at the rocker panel area. It has to get rivets in there because resistance arms can't reach, and it's actually listed as H. Those little rivets there, you would actually have to count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 7 rivets there. And all the black dots are all resistance welds, and then next to the original spot welds from the factory. And then you have silicone bronze is done in the sectioning
Well, so
areas.
how do I know what those symbols mean?
Well, there's a little chart
We
there
got to
that
go back
also
to the chart in the
Yeah.
back where it says symbols.
They'll give you a chart for that and tell you exactly what you have to do. So as you can see, the squeeze type resistant spot welds, you would count those out. Those are how many welds you have to have in that area. They're not going to give you a little box like Nissan does with a number 15 that tells you there's 15 welds in there. Yep. It's next to the original, and it'll lay out the entire amount of welds you have. And at the bottom there, you got your, it was 6 rivets. The other picture was smaller. 6 rivets there, and at the end there's one resistance weld because you can reach with the arm there. Wherever you can't reach with the arm, no single-sided resistance welds. No one has that. And then wherever you section, it's an open butt joint MIG braze.
Wow. Man, so the thing about me, if I have to do some counting, I'd have to wear flip-flops.
Well, now listen. Now remember back when I told everybody that it's similar to a CE class. the Chevy Cruze, if we had to, and we don't have to do it with this car, but back in the quarter panel extension panel area and the taillight pocket area, if we had a few slots back there and we had to do silicone bronze welding there, slot welds, that would be identical to the Chevy Cruze. Otherwise, the rest of this is the same as the Chevy Cruze. Chevy Cruze has rivets at the bottom, resistance welds wherever you can reach with the arms, and the sectioning areas is silicone bronze on the Chevy Cruze. Very, very, almost identical to the C or E-Class Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah, and a $19,000 Chevy Cruze and a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 Mercedes. I mean, the days of differentiation between
Most shops are gonna see
Asian,
a Chevy
European,
Cruze.
and American. You just got to have the equipment and you got to have the training.
It's trickling down. The Germans have a very intelligent way of doing certain things and have a very long history of practicing these things and sometimes over-engineering stuff, but it's trickling down to the Americans now.
Yeah.
You know.
So one of the things in preparation for this show was, you know, we could give everybody fish all day long. Here's all these little things you should know about the car. But really we wanted to teach people how to fish. Like, how do you get into it? How do you find the information? And then there's just so much in there for an hour show. We just can't give all the fish to you. But I want to teach you how to fish.
Right. So Mercedes shares in every model, correct, the color-coded, here's what it's made of.
Yep.
It's in the repair information. You can find it, or the easiest place to find it now is actually in the mbcollisioncenters.com. And if you're a member or certified, shop, sponsored shop, you have access to this area, which will give you these color-coordinated, color-coded type materials and products in the vehicle. And if you look, there's 14 different types of substrates utilized in this vehicle for the vehicle construction.
Well, you got the carbon steel, you got stainless steel, you got ultra-high strength steel, you got aluminum, extruded aluminum, magnesium, fiber-reinforced plastic, SMC, thermoplastics. This is when we talk about mixed material car, and it's, like the Cadillac CT6 is a mixed material. No, this is a mixed material car, and it's a massive production car.
Right, and I've got to know with each one of my substrates what is and isn't allowed
Absolutely.
on that substrate, what causes that substrate to fail, what is
How's
catastrophic.
it attached, right? How do we repair it? Yep.
Yeah, lots of different things to know. Well, this is what I like, because we tell our estimators that they're going to have to be, Larry, you like to say para-engineers almost, because you've got to take the impact point and then follow the travel, where the damage is going to go. And the OEs, we say this all the time online, the OEs design cars for energy to travel in a certain way, the load path, so to speak. And we can't do anything that alters the load path. I love the diagrams that Mercedes provides showing you, here's our intention. If the vehicle is hit this way, here's where all the energy is going. So there's kind of no excuse
Well,
for not being able to track the damage.
I don't know why. I teach it in one of my classes, crash dynamics and stuff, and the collision pulse, how it goes through the vehicle, and basically it's a class on these type of pictures, and then watching a bunch of crash videos and studying crash videos. And I don't know why insurance adjusters and body shop personnel don't watch more crash videos and understand this is what happens in a collision. This is 30 miles an hour usually into a retaining wall, which is basically the vehicle smashing into itself. It's an exact duplicate. And look at what happens away from the area of contact, all the secondary or indirect damage that occurs in the vehicle. And Benz really, if you look at this particular car here, which I think is an E-Class, and you look at how that energy path goes through this vehicle, and you watch a crash video of the same vehicle, you'll see how that crash path runs through that vehicle in the same fashion.
What's of really importance from an estimating standpoint or damage analysis is a front end to the bumper hit is designed to take the energy and put it right down the center tunnel. Which means now how do we find the damage in the center tunnel when it's got a console sitting there and shields underneath? That's going to take some disassembly to actually find all the damage on this car.
Well, that's why pre-repair measuring is so important and
We're going
vital.
to talk about that here in a minute.
And this is why also you'll see a lot of German cars or even some of the Asian vehicles with falling suspensions. It'll get hit in a frontal collision, such as the top picture there, and then they'll send it for a wheel alignment because it's on the estimate. I don't think it needs it. It was a high head. And it goes, and they say, well, we can't do a wheel alignment. Well, why not? Suspension wasn't it. The back suspension's out of whack. Well, it has nothing to do with the accident. It was hitting the front. Well, an object in motion remains in, stays in motion until met with an outside force, and then comes to rest. So, that's that. If you watch the crash video, that's the rear wheel swinging forward. In some of these crash videos, you'll actually see the rear wheel deflect so far forward, it'll actually hit the rocker panel and do damage to it and knock the rocker panel molding off, and then deflect back or resolute back to its sitting position. And it might be a little crooked, but you never look at it because it's hitting the rear. Why am I going to look there? And that's always been my thing in class. Always start at the opposite end and work your way back into the damage.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this is that if you look at the top photo with the front end hit, the energy goes into the lower rail. And then you notice that arrow that is kind of pushing up and going into the tower. So it's not just going to stay low. On a low rail hit, it's going to stay low and then also transmit high. Which most cars, it'll stay low and go in.
And I can't do anything that's going to change that load path. So when I'm done fixing the car, I had better not have monkeyed with that a little bit.
And if you notice how the energy also travels through the upper firewall mounting flange and the upper roof rail header, front header, that's where the windshield goes. The windshield's actually adding some torsional stability to it because of the urethane. That's why the glass is so important.
These are great diagrams. I mean, no matter what you fix, right, I would go in and download and print these and have them in the shop and have them hanging behind every estimator's desk for a front, a side, and a rear collision. Because the way load path is traveling is not unique to Mercedes-Benz. They're really, really good at it.
If you look at all the companies that have these pictures, they're all basically the same. Even GM, Dodge, if they had a similar picture, which I think they have a couple of them, you're going to see basically the same type of load path.
Right, and that's the difference between when the when the '59 Impala met the 2009 Impala. Why one is destroyed and the guy dies, and the guy walks away.
Because one doesn't have crash management or anything like that. And I love when people say they don't build them like they used to. Thank God.
Yeah, good thing.
Because they're death traps.
We're walking away. But these are great to have around to remind yourself as an estimator of what you've got to do. But they're also great to be able to hand to a customer, especially if that customer is being told that you're charging for things that are unreasonable, like pre-measure. No one else does it, et cetera. To be able to set them down and go, here's what your car's designed to do. And I want to make sure I'm getting it all for you. Other people don't.
Well, what do you do, especially on these vehicles, when you fix the whole front end, but there's still a buckle in the center tunnel? You can't fix it.
Yeah, it's a total loss.
It's a total loss. It's over. So let's jump into repair replace. So this is just a SLK, or and this could be a C-Class. It doesn't matter. People are going to come in almost every collision, or in New York, a big scratch in the bumper is normal. Parallel parking, right? And we're going to wind up having damage on bumpers.
Okay.
Like that. So question is, do we repair or replace the bumper that you see there? Depends. So does it have the radar? Because if it has the radar, so again, now we have to research. And if it's got those radars that are under the bumper, which we talked about, are all over the car, if it has it, so Mercedes then just jumps in and says, when performing filling and painting work on the bumper, it is important to make sure the maximum coat thickness is not exceeded. This is all about paint now. And it's not exceeded at the short range radar sensors. This can lead to malfunctions as the sensors detect excessive coat. The limit of coat thickness at the sensors is 2 coats of paint. Now to clarify that is 2 refinish operations. That's not just 1 coat, 2 coat.
Right.
But it's like refinish it, and then it gets refinished again, and if you have to refinish it again after that, you either have to strip the bumper, which we really don't do, or replace the bumper. The other thing that this article says is that as the short-range radar does not function correctly, which now your test drive, you have to check the function. If it doesn't function correctly, you have to either strip paint or replace the cover, and you're going to replace the cover. So
to be clear, I don't get 2 refinish operations. I get 1 because I get the new
you got the OE.
I can fix that bumper once, and I can't fix it again.
So now if a car
you
comes
can't
in,
put filler. You got to realize that.
You can't do
heads
filler.
into it.
Right.
This is a scratch we're talking about, and you're going to sand and paint it. You're talking filler stuff. You have a big issue because Benz sometimes doesn't have little round sensors. They got a box that's back there. Now, for example, let's say that the left-hand corner, like the damage we just saw, was the area that we repaired. So we sand that down. There's no filler needed, let's say. We sand it down and smooth everything out. I'm going to put a little bit of primer. I'm going to paint it. That sensor might actually still work. But as we paint over the top of the rest of the bumper, the other 3 sensors may not work. as we clear over, because it might have been painted once before and it was actually a good job. That's why it's very important when you start to sand out damage, you have to see the rings. Now, to save you time on that, you can do it all you want and waste time doing that. Or you can go out and purchase a non-ferrous, non-metal substrate type.
And most shops don't have that.
No.
Yeah.
Actually, GM put out that letter, and they actually put out the company that makes one. I have one of those, and yeah, it's about $2,000.
Yeah.
Just like my kilometer happens to be, I have one that's $1,000 that does ferrous, non-ferrous, but only goes up to 70 mils, which is good for most body shops, you know, for mil thickness. You know, there's body filler in the area or whatever. Remember, about 120 mils is acceptable. With the filler, it's just about 3 millimeters plus some paint, maybe 124. But if I'm doing investigations, I bring my other one, which was $4,000 for that stupid thing, but that goes up to 600 mils. That's a different story. I have to prove, I can't maybe sometimes do destructive testing, so I have to measure how thick the area is and say this is really unacceptable. So for most shops, you can probably get a kilometer for around ferrous, non-ferrous with no extra dials on it, just automatically does it for about $1,000. But this plastic reader is and it also does wood. So you're probably looking at about $1,800. Those are two things you should have in the shop that the blueprint / damage assessor / estimator needs to have just to measure this stuff out, because you don't want to start the repair and then find out, oh, I need a bumper cover.
Well, that's
because there's
just
3
it, you
layers
know.
of paint on here or 3 paint jobs. I see the rings.
Right.
So
Now,
we
see-
may even, in the estimating process, have to grab a small DA out. You know,
Yeah.
car's there. Let's DA it real quick.
Well,
If
instead
it
of
looks
DAing
like,
it, I can just go ahead and measure it.
well, if you have the
Yeah.
$2,000 tool. Now, if you don't, you can take a little DA, and if it looks like it's a 100-year-old tree, it needs a cover.
Right, yeah. If you got a lot of rings, you got to be, and that's very important now, especially like you
Yeah.
said with the ADAS that you always talk about with Toyota, Nissan,
Yeah.
Mercedes-Benz, and GM.
Yeah.
It's,
And here we go. We get asked all the time, do OEs allow plastic repair? The answer is yes,
Yeah,
they do.
sure.
They have some limitations. So,
Absolutely.
And Mercedes has some very specific ones here.
Yep. So basically, in cases of major damage, and they consider major damage, which would be anything more than 40 millimeters, such as large cracks, tears, holes in the plastic, it's game over.
but wait,
now-
how big is 40 millimeters?
It's about 1.75 inches.
Right.
That's it. So that,
Remember, an inch
that
is
picture,
about an inch is 25.5
Yep.
millimeters.
Yep.
So you're less than 2 inches,
And then it's gone.
and then it's junk.
So
Yep.
if the bumper's ripped in half, I can't just kind of weld that back
Nope.
together?
Nope. And then we still have to follow the conversation about the radar. So can't be in the radar area, and it's got to be less than 1.75 inches approximately, and then we can look at possibly repairing, as long as there's not enough bunch of coats of paint on it.
Right. So that's great.
But if you look at it, I mean, obviously, number 4 in this picture looks like it's a lot longer than 40 millimeters.
Yep.
That hole looks like it's bigger than 40 millimeters. And here's the best. Number 3, a scuff, like you ran into a concrete wall.
If it's over the size limit.
No. You could have this wide of an area. You could have this long of an area. The depth of it can only be 1 millimeter.
Yep. Yeah, so if it goes in, we got filler. That's the problem, especially when you're dealing with, so we got more than 1 millimeter scratch depth, it's game over. If it's in the radar and we're going to go more than 2 coats of paint, it's game over.
So we're
Or if
not
it's,
fixing really any Mercedes bumper
it's
covers.
pretty tough to fix the bumpers, yeah.
It's pretty much scuff and paint, you know, a scratch and paint or light scuffing.
It's
and
pretty
paint.
minor stuff, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty minor
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, you know, a fascia, it's a fascia. It protects a lot of stuff. It also has to be transparent enough to whatever type sensors they have, so you can't add material to it. Okay, and if you reduce too much material, it may not have the protective properties that it originally had, so somebody could bump into it and damage a $4,000 stupid sensor or computer behind it, or $800 computer sensor.
Right. All right. So one thing that Mercedes does that we like is they restrict parts. Larry, talk about restricted parts.
Mercedes-Benz came out with a program a few years ago where they started coming out with their aluminum cars, and it started with the 222, the V222, which is the S-Class, and along with the SL. And they came out with the AMG SLS, and now the new AMG GTR, which is the similar version to the SLS, but a little bit cheaper. I mean, it's still $170,000 or $190,000.
That's a little cheaper.
It's well, the SLS, I believe, was like around 250
Yeah,
or something.
I got it.
That's the gull-wing door ones. You know, and the SL, the SLS, and the GTR, most of the car is completely restricted because of it's all aluminum, it's all welded. The S-Class will have basically the front structure is restricted. We've made arguments that the back should be also restricted because it is rivet and glued to aluminum components,
Right.
but they sell it to
But
anybody.
so why does Mercedes restrict parts? We know that they got parts that are
Because
restricted.
the welding
Why?
is so important. Listen, most technicians, and I'm going to say this, I taught for many, many years welding. I see what goes on in re-inspections and stuff. Most technicians can't mag weld. They really can't. Even after they pass some test, they still can't mag weld. There's some guys out there that are very good. Nobody in the collision repair field looked upon by AWS as a professional welder. We don't weld enough. And because of this, aluminum's that much harder to weld and become proficient at. And I've talked about it before. You got to weld at least 2 to 6 hours every week. Average of 4 hours a week, just practicing aluminum welding to be decent at it. Okay, and to pass these tests. And Mercedes-Benz, really put forth a very strict test and strict parameters like Audi, like Land Rover Jaguar to make sure the welding does get, properly done.
Yeah.
We'll joke sometimes like, why can't you be like, Porsche and why can't we just glue and rivet everything? It'd be a lot easier. That test would be a day, not,
Right. So it's restricted parts is a safety issue. Those
It's
are
a
the parts
safety
that the manufacturer has said, hey, if you get this wrong, it's a severe
You could kill,
catastrophic.
not only kill somebody in the vehicle, but you could kill somebody next to the vehicle because something could fail very easily.
Yeah.
And Mercedes, just like most manufacturers, but Mercedes is all about brand.
Yeah.
It's a safe car, it's a beautiful car, it drives right, and it's got to do that after a collision.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's why they restrict it.
and beyond aluminum now, Mercedes has got even more substrates that we're dealing with, particularly carbon fiber.
Yep. So this is just a quick TSB or whatever you want to call it, but basically,
Don't touch it.
down at the bottom, it says, all repairs should be investigated with an authorized Mercedes-Benz Collision Center prior to making a decision to replace any components. So you got carbon fiber, and it also says the complaint is clear coat's wavy, clear coat deposits or contaminants, or carbon fiber possibly for an external.
Crack.
Well, that's what we're talking about. And the person or the person that's going to actually determine that is a certified Mercedes center.
Right.
So this car should be at a Mercedes certified shop.
What we'll have is like with Audi, with the new A8 with some carbon fiber, and obviously the R8, and then now the S-Class with carbon fiber in it, and also the BMW 7 Series has it. You're seeing, these companies are doing this to make the vehicle lighter but yet stronger. We get a problem with a part, we'll take a picture of it, we'll send it in, they'll tell us yes or no. In some cases, on some of these rare cars, such as like the R8 or even the Lamborghini, that's got the tub that's carbon fiber, they'll fly that one guy from Vegas that does it for a lot of the OEMs. He'll come in and tell you if it can, it can't be done. And it's like the old McLaren that had carbon fiber. It had to be shipped back. What was it, the SLR? Mercedes-Benz had to be shipped back to England to McLaren to be fixed if the carbon fiber got damaged. So
It's an expensive tow bill.
It's in the airplane. Listen, but it's in the airplane industry. It's in the helicopter industry.
Yeah,
The Army fixes them, or the Navy fixes those helicopter blades in certain cases because there's parameters for it. It came from the aeronautics. There's ways to check this out. When they say no, it's no. And that's why we have to be ready for this. And there's a lot of technology in these cars that we have to realize.
Yeah. So, what do I got going on here? Am I doing brake jobs now for Mercedes?
Well,
no.
but
Now,
we
we
might be
purposely
removing.
kept this from you.
Okay.
Yeah, we might be removing a wheel though. And then with all the different braking systems, I had no idea this existed. Larry said, "Hey, did you hear about it?" I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
And then we tracked down the document. I'm like, "You gotta be kidding."
All the MRI cars, which is Mercedes-Benz rear-wheel drive architecture, even if it's all-wheel drive, it's rear-wheel drive architecture platforms. The MRAs, all the newer cars, the S, the E, the C, the GLA, and the CLS. If you go ahead and have a shock to the wheel, an impact to the wheel, axial or lateral, you have to change the rotor. If the rotor has any chipping to the paint coating, it has to be changed.
So do you automatically have to change the rotor, or do you have to pull off and inspect and
Well,
look
here,
at the...
okay, how many times have you ever seen somebody take a wheel off and the wheel won't come off, and you kind of tap it with your hand and it won't come off? Well, if it doesn't come off by you tapping with your hand to try and move it off, and you have to get a rubber mallet or a block of wood and a hammer, you're changing that rotor. once you hit that way.
That's when he said that to me. I'm like,
Nice.
what? He goes, here's the document.
Here's
Wow.
the document, and it's in 3 different areas of the system. Obviously, the easiest place to find it is brakes, and it explains everything. So if you're changing a rim and tire because it took an impact, you're changing the rotor, which means you also got to do brakes.
So now you're, wow, that's another 5 lines on my estimate.
Well,
okay.
I'll be honest with you. You ready for this? On an AMG SLS, I think it's $10,000 a corner on the brakes to do them with the rotors. Yeah, that's no joke. So hopefully that doesn't get into an accident. But an S-Class or a C-Class or a CLS or an E-Class, they get damaged, you're going to be changing that rotor if that rim's been damaged. So make sure you do check that out and do understand what the writing is and stuff
Yeah.
like that from the repair manufacturer.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Mercedes-Benz does in their guidelines require you to pre-measure the car. So every Mercedes-Benz in every collision will get pre-measured, and they've got 4 different ways for us to do that.
Yep.
And
4 pieces of equipment that they say is
Approved.
Approved, yeah.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, 2 of them on there I was expecting. One I wasn't shocked with, but I was a little shocked to see the Black Hawk Shark on there.
Yeah.
The Shark, listen, the Shark's a good system. The problem with the Shark is, and I didn't like it from the beginning, it does measure very well. It's accurate. I'm loud, so if I'm talking to somebody, it'll actually come up with a stop. Now, if I can set it off with my voice, because remember, it works through, it's like, that's basically a submarine.
Yeah.
It works
Yeah.
off sonar.
Yeah.
The problem with this is, even though you plug these little things all over the car to measure it, the shop's noisy. Now, in blueprinting, it's probably not a bad thing. If you have an off-site blueprinting thing, you're not going to have all sorts of noises. But if someone's using an air chisel, you cannot measure the car.
Right.
Right, or a hammer, or a
Or an
DA,
impact gun,
or
yeah,
a...
no,
but,
it's
but
just-
at this point, we're not fixing the car yet.
We're just
We're just doing
diagnosing.
pre-measure.
It's
Yeah, no,
diagnosing.
I was really, I agree with you. I've used the Shark before in lab environment. Fantastic
Great,
tool.
yeah, great.
I struggled with it in the shop. But, so I was kind of shocked to see that. So that I will say that surprised me. I was expecting the top 2. I was not surprised to see Carliner on there at all.
Yeah.
But then I was like, the Shark, okay, all right, cool. I'm gonna rethink it.
But they
All right.
change it for benches. Benches, you can only have a car bench or a Select.
Right.
Now, if you're a certified Elite 2 shop, that means you got to do you're doing the S-Class, the Maybach, S-Maybach. You have to have an XL. If you're a part of their commercial program for the Sprinter, you have to have an XL bench, because the bench has to be really, really long for it. So there's a couple of different options that you have with this and stuff like that. But as far as the length of the bench, if you work on a lot of Benzes, you might have one XL and maybe 1 or 2 or 10 other Select benches or even car benches. But you have to have one long bench to be part of the program. That's part of your tooling and stuff that you have to have.
Yeah, and you got to have, if you're going to do structural repairs, it's this bench. One
that's
or
it.
the other.
And fixing on anything else is classified or considered an improper repair.
Now, for Mercedes-Benz, let's go back to where we were with BMW. Putting a quarter panel on a car is considered benching it?
It
Am I
depends on the
benching?
vehicle.
Okay.
It'll tell you at the bottom of the estimate if you're required to have the bench or not. In some cases you don't have to, in some cases you do.
Well, and if you look at the picture there, it's I know Mercedes calls it something different. I call it the side gantry, which is the orange things in the back of that car are actually attached to the bench that go up there, and they'll help you position the quarter panel in the right place. So you just set it up there and weld it on, and it's right. There's
Now,
there's no guessing.
Keep in mind there's a separate front H for Benz versus all the other companies with Select. So if you only have one Select machine, you're going to have 2 of these front braces at the front area, one for everybody else and one for Mercedes-Benz. That has to be swapped out every so often. Also keep in mind that Benz also has, because they've worked so many years with Select, they have certain vehicles like the SL and stuff, and some other models. They have from the strut tower to the rad support. In case you want to do the upper rail sectioning, you can just put that up there, and that's your measuring device. Because there's really no way to measure under hood unless you're doing it from underneath. Because you're really measuring where the strut towers are, and obviously here where the lower rails and upper rails go.
Yeah. Well, Select's just fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love, they dropped us off some toys to play with, and I was so intimidated by Select. Now I'm just like, this is fantastic.
The first time I used a Select is with a Mercedes, this I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago, I was like, oh man, this is a pain. But once it was set up, it was a dream.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, they also have some material requirements, but I just can't go to the cabinet and grab anything I want when I'm working on Mercedes-Benz.
No, so we did the corrosion protection show, and we've had that whole age-old thing of zinc versus copper. Mercedes says, here is the part number, here's the product, and you can buy it from us.
They don't have any copper
Now,
dust pen?
now keep in mind, the spray cans for mechanics.
Yep.
They're not for collision guys.
Yep.
Collision guys get this, that little small quart can weighs about 9,000 pounds, and you have to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger to stir it.
It's actually like stirring Play-Doh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very viscous, extremely viscous type material.
And then you put it on with a cotton dauber.
Yeah, it's difficult to, once you mix it up good, I mean, if you put it in your paint shaker, the building shakes, not the can. I mean, literally,
It's zinc.
I mean, it's like no bigger than this, but it feels like
like
it weighs
12
900
pounds, yeah.
pounds.
It's like bringing back a moon rock, right?
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Like, you know, like you'd have to do like one of these things. Okay, I'm going to toss it. It's like a shot put. You know, it goes 2 feet ahead of you. It's not. It's very difficult to use.
And there's, I mean, we've got seam sealer, we got cavity wax, we got everything here.
Yep.
Yes, they
And
have
there's
everything on
there's
there.
your
They
part
give you all
number.
the part numbers.
Yep.
This is at the bottom of the repair information. It'll
Yep.
also give you the feeler gauge. It'll give you side gantry or any other, you know, if you need the bench or not at the bottom of the thing. And actually
all
gives
in
you the
there.
part numbers. It tells you everything you need.
Yep. Follow the OE, follow the OE.
And then I found this interesting, the body filler, because a lot of the industry standard is, oh geez, we've got 3 millimeters plus or minus, we're okay. This says 2.
So to be in compliance.
2 millimeters is the thickness. This is actually the specifications of the body filler that you need to actually use on a vehicle.
Nice.
And it goes all the way through and gives you the specs, but it's also at 2 millimeters.
And we can go direct to metal, it looks like.
Yeah.
This is application without primer.
If it's, well, and that's where the spec is. The spec is it can go direct to metal if it's designed to go direct to metal following this spec.
Right.
And they actually tell you up there, you got a part number you could actually order for the filler.
That's good to go. Now, Mercedes has been doing a lot of great stuff lately.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that the team down in Texas has been doing to help collision repairers is they're going out and they're teaching seminars to insurers.
Yep.
When Benito took over the program a few years back, he designed a program specifically, kind of like what we're doing right here, but not for collision repairs, for insurers. He wanted to explain their position statements, their processes, and the branding of their vehicle and what they're looking for in the future. So he really wanted to cover a lot of different stuff. And Ben came up with a really good program. He has it a lot of times at dealerships that are, in the area. He posts constantly on LinkedIn for anybody who wants it. It's free.
It's free.
Sometimes he travels the country. Sometimes we'll ship people over here to Texas, and we'll show you at our Dallas, Fort Worth area training center in Grapevine, which is it looks like a dealership. And you walk in, and there's tons of labs and welding and structural repair and cosmetic repair and electrical repair, and then you got all the mechanic stuff, because mechanics go down there to get trained. So he did a really great job, but he explains it to all the, and they have the booklet to take with them.
Yeah, so you get a lot of
70,
information
80
out of
pages?
that. And we hear a lot of times about, what are they always doing to help me get paid as a repairer? Well, they're doing a lot, and more than they've ever
Mercedes
done
is
before.
especially.
And Mercedes is a great example. You're right. What Benito's doing is fantastic. If you are an adjuster, if you're
I'll speak out. If you're a claim manager, get your adjusters in this.
yeah,
Well, even
or at least
independent-
get yourself
listen,
doing
if you're
it.
an
right?
independent guy,
Yeah.
if you're an independent,
Yeah.
that's a small company, only 2 of us, or I got my own independent company. I got lucky enough to get a
take
couple
it.
of insurance companies. Just ask Benito.
Right.
He'll let you come. I mean, you got to
Yep.
pay your own way to go, but once again, if you have your own company, it's a tax write-off for going for training.
Yep.
But the fact is that it's well worth the training process. You'd be surprised what you can learn on this. And yes, Benz has a lot of similar stuff to the other German companies. So
Yeah.
you kind of get not only this company, you get in some of the other companies because it's very similar in the processes.
Yeah.
Well, and I get phone calls and people go, oh, geez, why does Mercedes do? It's like, you should go to this course.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, you wrote a policy. You elected to insure a Mercedes-Benz. So if you didn't want to repair it the way they're supposed to be, then just stop writing policies on Mercedes-Benz products
Exactly.
or Audi or whatever. But if you're going to write the policy, then you're going to fix them the right way. And that's not, well,
And
you
I
always say,
argue
it's not our
sometimes
problem.
that your risk
So
management team didn't do a good enough analysis to
Yeah.
figure out what the risk could be.
You learn from this one, live to fight
Right.
another day, so to speak. All right,
Yep.
but then Mercedes takes it a little bit different. There's a lot of training available, but it is, correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, I do have to be a
You have to
dealer
be attached
sponsor.
to a dealer.
Okay, got to be attached
Dealer
to a
has
dealer.
to sponsor you, or a dealer obviously can sponsor their own shop or apply for their own shop. Sometimes they're allowed two shops that they can sponsor. The shop can electively go for Elite 1 or Elite 2 or commercial. Commercial can be a little bit more difficult in some cases because of the size of your shop, and we'll kind of cover that now. You have your regular Mercedes-Benz Elite 1, which is basically every car that's not aluminum. You have your Elite 2, which has to go through the specialized aluminum program on the ISO 9606-2. And then commercial vehicles. And the biggest thing with the commercial vehicles, which is really the Sprinter, you have to have a booth that can fit the biggest Sprinter they sell.
Yeah.
That's a big booth.
That's
Most
a big
shops
booth.
don't have that.
It's a big, long booth
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and it's tall.
I can't just leave the doors open and hang a little,
Nope.
hang a little
Nah,
plastic.
you can't put plastic all over it. Nope. You will not get approved. Now,
You remember when quad cab trucks came out,
Yeah.
like the big mega cab, and you were like,
Yeah.
how am I going to get that painted? So
And one of the things about being certified in the certified program is a couple things, but the training. If you're going to fix an aluminum car, the training
well,
is,
aluminum steel.
first of all, it's 10 days.
Well,
Yeah.
that's for the
We're going
welding
to take
test.
you
The
for
first
10
time
days.
you're going down for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You're there from Monday to Friday. Saturday and Sunday you stay over, and then Monday through Friday again. It's 80 hours worth of welding, and then 6 months later you go back again. Because Benz follows strictly the ISO certification. So if you don't weld, 80% of the time, I believe it is, or 85% of the time for your job, which we don't, you have to take the test every 6 months. If you do, you work for a welding, a company, a fabrication company, and their guy there will sign off on the fact that you do welding. You take the test every 2 years. So we got to take it every 6 months, so that we're certified through ISO. Some other companies will use the ISO certification, but they won't make you do it for every 2 years. So for the first 6 months, you're certified through ISO. The next year and a half, you're certified through only the OEM.
Yep.
And that's what they chose. That's fine for them.
And then the stage 3 is a 3-day advanced training, and you do that every 2 years. That's why.
Well, that's-
that's why every so often it's like, okay, back to Texas.
Well, actually, what you got to do
Yeah.
is you got to do the welding test.
Yep.
And it used to be a crapshoot because you didn't know if you were going to pass or fail, because visually they looked okay, but they get lap shear tested, they get broken apart and look for porosity. So the porosity one you could break on your own and do a couple of test samples, but there was no way to rip apart the cast parts and find out how
Right.
much strength. So you had to wait a few days. Now they have in-house testing right there. Kevin went and got his ISO certification for AWS welding inspector, and he does it right then and there. So when you get a couple of pass that look good, hand these in. Now you can go to a different welder and he can break them apart. On the 3-day, you actually have to be creative. He makes you weld something different. Like we'll take one, like a flat 2 millimeter or 3 millimeter piece, weld a square on top of it, but we have to weld all the way around continuously. Then he'll make us weld another one, but he'll make us skip back and forth between the sides. Or he'll make you make a box out of this stuff. Like you actually have to be creative.
So basically, he's just messing with you.
No, he wants you to show you different parameters that the machine can do. That basically that's it. He wants to make you a better welder. He's really Kevin's doing a great job of trying to show us not how to pass the test. Kind of like when we went to high school, what was all high school about? How to pass the SATs and the Regents exams. That's all they taught you.
Right.
He's trying to teach you how to weld properly.
So what does all this cost, Larry? I mean, is it pretty cheap? You just write one fee?
If you're a dealership, it's cheap
Yeah.
because you don't pay for it. You just pay for your tech to go there, and it's part of your dealership stuff. My first test cost the shop $15,500 just for me to take the test. The second tech, if we had to send them, would be $8,800. Oh no, excuse me, $10,000 now. It went up. Plus, you got to pay my salary. Plus, you got to pay, my food, my lodging, my rent a car, and then add on top of that. Now, I'm part of management, so I'm no different than an electric bill. But if I was actually a tech that worked every day in a car and not fill in every so often,
pay 'em.
think about I got to get paid too. But think about the loss of revenue.
Productivity.
Right.
Yep.
So if I got to send Richie from Exclusive, or Carmine's got to be sent from Mid-Island Collision, what do they do for the week when he's not there? The 2 weeks that he's not there, not welding.
This could cost you
Or
$30,000, $40,000.
Yeah, it could be very,
Yeah.
very expensive
It
the
gets
first time.
And that's why it's not, $50 an hour when you're a
Exactly.
certified shop working on a.
Well, this is why I've said that you're going to have somebody like Carmine or Richie or myself that's certified for all the OEMs we're sponsored by. We're going to spend probably 3 months out of the year away.
Yeah.
Training, welding, or sitting at our computer at the shop
Taking training classes.
taking training classes.
So here, this is kind of just an overview of all the requirements that Mercedes-Benz has.
This
for
is
it.
not all of them.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is just
this is
one
just a
page,
quick little
or 2
one page.
pages,
I
yeah.
don't want to get into any of this,
Yeah.
right? Because we're not everybody who's watching this show is going to have a chance to be a certified Mercedes-Benz.
Well,
Collision
the
center.
one thing I wanted to say about this, and you can read through it.
Yep.
But it's one of the program requirements. One thing is we've said: every car, every time, get the information. Mercedes says every car, every time, and we're going to come in and pull files and audit that. And if you don't do that, you can't be certified.
Yep.
So we got an OE saying this is how you fix the car.
Yep.
Well, here, I mean, if you look at the program standards, standards is the bare minimum. If you look on this side over here and you look at genuine parts usage, right here, criteria, only new Mercedes-Benz genuine parts are used on the repair of the Mercedes-Benz vehicles. Orders must be placed through the sponsoring dealership. It says it right there. You have to do this.
Right.
You go to you go to the other side. It says blueprinting. Every vehicle must have documented repair process blueprint, including WIS procedures. You have to do it. This is what you
When you write the estimate.
Right. Right. And then so it's a great program.
There is no, they don't pay for this, or they didn't agree. It's not your problem. What
Right.
you know, not my problem what insurance company you picked. My problem is I have to convince my customer. Once they say it's okay, I care less what the insurance company has to say about it. It's not my
Right.
problem.
Some people need that lesson over and over again, but it's a nice program, and it's a program with teeth.
Yeah.
And they do a really good job when they audit. And so, you know, if I understand that not every OE
They're
can
very
do this.
helpful. You call. I mean, I called what 4 times yesterday.
Yeah.
Both Kevin and Taylor picked up right away. Either emailed us a couple of things we couldn't find pictures of, or get a picture of, or a question on. You know, it's in German versus English.
I was actually amazed that out of the 4 phone calls you made, 3 times they picked up, and the other time they called right back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
But
no
that
BS.
they do that for anybody.
Yeah.
You know, they'll do that for anybody that's on the program because you have somebody to call. That's what's great about the European collision repair programs is that they have people that are there that you can talk to, that you can speak to, and not have to go on Facebook and make a question and get the wrong answer, or even where I have to answer questions. Sometimes it's like there's some OEMs over there I want to send bills to because the amount of questions I had to answer for their stuff.
Right.
Well, and when I called Benito and said, hey, can you send me some stuff for this show we're going to do? He goes, you know what? Here, go for it.
Yeah.
And I actually saw him in Texas last week, and you know, he said, you got everything you need, and it's just so helpful.
Yeah, it's a good company. So, you know, we just scratched the surface. A little trip through Wiz, so to speak. I feel like the Wizard of Oz, right? A little trip, and we made it to see the Wizard. But there's a lot there. It takes practice and time. And if you're not seeing a lot of those cars, it's just probably not worth it, right?
No.
If you're not repairing a Mercedes-Benz a week, send it to a certified shop. Just You don't have to fix every car. And it's okay not to fix some cars. It's okay for cars to total too. So send it down the road. There's a lot involved in fixing these cars. All right. Well, we'll be back next month for more on the OE show. And that'll be our last show before SEMA.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So, yeah, right? Great.
What a big SEMA show.
If you have any questions, if there's anything we didn't get answered on the show today, well, you can always reach us on the website. We'll see you next month. Thanks.
Yeah.